Are you an investigative professional? Did you know?
Psst, psst. Hey, did you hear? Investigator's Toolbox 2.0 is launching. You won't believe the upgrades that have been uploaded. There's a new user interface and the new PI advisory board is launching soon. Today is the day to join investigators-toolbox.com. That's investigators-toolbox.com. Get yourself set up for the new year right. This is the premier online resource community for investigative professionals. Use code GOODBYE22 and receive $50 off the membership fee. That's a savings of 25%. Do not delay in checking out this site. Just Google Investigators Toolbox or look for a link in the description of this episode. Welcome to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Matt's still on holiday, but he wanted to bring back this great episode with George Gergis. George wrote a best practices manual for ethics and standards and has made it available for all investigators. Guys like George are treasures to our industry. This one's worth a refresher. Please welcome George Gergis and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everyone to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Well, apparently I'm running out of guests and people to have on the show. So I dipped back into the barrel and I just settled on George Gergis. So George, I'm going to welcome you back to the program, man. How are you?
Thanks, Matt. I'm glad to be here. And like I said, anything I could do to support your podcast, support you and support the profession, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And I'm only kidding, man. I love chatting with you and I love having you back on. It's been a while. So I figured we'd get on and talk about standards of investigations and one of the passions that you have for all that. But before we get into all that good stuff, it's been a while. It's probably been almost a year since I've talked to you. I think last time we chatted, it was getting into the NALI conference in June of last year.
Yeah.
Unless you snuck in since then, I don't remember. But what have you been up to, man? What have you been doing?
Many people have gone through this pandemic and been having work slowdowns and different adjustments. Fortunately for us, we've been extremely busy, more busier than the last few years than we've ever been before. We've adjusted accordingly and made changes to the kind of like post-pandemic methods of investigating. And it's, contacting people and dealing with anxiety, people's fears and things of that nature. And technology has been great. We're doing a video Zoom here on a podcast, but we're using the same technology to interview witnesses and get in contact with clients. So, we've just been, plugging along and been pretty busy with, regular casework.
So how's your state? Did they adopt officially like a method for doing notaries online at all or no?
I don't think they did. I think there was some talk about it, and I'm a notary, but I never followed up with it because I don't notarize. The reason I'm a notary is so when we take statements that we have sworn statements. Right. So I never really followed up. It didn't do we don't have revenue building sources as a notary, so I don't know.
No, you can't make money doing that. But you bring up a good point, and for folks that are just starting off in investigations, or maybe you've been out for a little bit, having a notary is something. It's an absolute must-have, and the reason you must have it is exactly what George said. So you're notarizing someone's signature. You're turning it into an affidavit. You're turning it into a legal document that the attorney can use for like a motion for summary judgment, right? So if they're trying to have a case resolved without having to litigate it out, having a statement from somebody that's actually a sworn statement, rather than having just a piece of paper that somebody signs that's not actually notarized, you can't use it, right? If it's not notarized, you can't use it in that motion for a summary judgment. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind, right? If you are not a notary, you should become a notary because it'll take you probably I mean, heck, somebody in my office just got their stamp literally yesterday, and they passed the test in January. So there is a huge backlog in getting that done, but it increases the value of the work that you do.
I tell people right away, anybody working for me should have a notary. And when I speak to other investigators at other firms, is there somebody here that can notarize this for me if I have to do like a process service? And they said, oh, we don't have any notaries. I go, that's crazy. Every legal investigator should be a notary. There should really not be an exception. And when you're taking that statement, and like you said, you're entering it as a sworn statement. Also, it puts the witness under penalty of perjury.
Yes.
And you can do that with an audio statement too. You announce that you are a notary when you're swearing them in to get an audio statement. So that's kind of like investigations 101 when it comes to legal investigations.
Yeah, and there's a huge difference on that, right? So if somebody's signing something that says, this is true to the best of my knowledge, if they're making that sworn statement, that's essentially what does it, right? I have read this statement, and under the penalty of perjury, it is true to the best of my knowledge. That specific and exact language should be at the end of every statement that you take. If you don't have a pen nearby, hit rewind, get a pen, come back and write that down, because it's an attorney gave me that advice very early on when I started my business, like to always put that in the statements. And it really, that's one of the things that'll set you aside from somebody else's work. I get it all the time where a statement will be taken from somebody, and then 4 or 5 years later, they realize it's not notarized, and they'll hire me to go track the person down again. And the person's like, I don't understand. I signed something already. It's like, I'm sorry, it wasn't an affidavit. Well, I don't want to sign it now, because I've had that happen too. I did it already. I don't want to do it again. Right. So make sure you do it right the first time. Yeah, definitely that type of language is really important. And things are changing too with regards to Zoom and video, because now you're able to do this stuff, but you have to do it literally the same way. Like, so in New York, they've changed the law, and it's actually in the process of really being revamped, where you're going to have to register with the state as a video notary, to be able to actually do things. Yeah, it's a whole problem. I mean, they're trying to collect more money is my guess, but you got to keep those records. Their standards. There's an actual document, like an affidavit document, that's going to need to accompany the statement. So you do the video statement, you have them sign it, a copy. If you take video of them signing it, you can throw your notary on it, but there has to be a supporting document that goes along with it that it has specific language in it. It's really interesting what they're doing, and I can see a lot of things like getting thrown out because, oh, you didn't follow the rules on this thing. So just the short answer is do it right the first time, every time, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that sometimes we get hired to challenge those notaries too. So we, being a notary and working cases where you're challenging notaries on a will or on a document, on a mortgage or something of that nature. So we kind of like, the importance of following the rules and being correct at the same time, because there's legal significances to what we do. And that's part of what, we're professional investigators, commercial investigators.
Some of us do. Just the other thing is it gives you credibility, right? So if you have to testify on a case or anything like that, they'll ask you, what are your credentials? What are your backgrounds? Oh, I'm a notary public. I'm a licensed private investigator. This and that. It just doesn't hurt you. It only makes you look better.
Yeah. And in most states it's considered an office, a state office. You're holding the office of a notary public.
Definitely. Excuse me. So going into things, what else have you been doing in this past year?
Well, I've been active with NALI, of course, the National Association of Legal Investigators. And we've had a couple of virtual conferences and the annual conference. And I'm also the president of the State Association in Indiana Society of Professional Investigators. And, you know, the volunteer work along with the professional work, it kind of keeps you really, really busy. I'm just thankful my kids are grown because it gives me some time to actually work on these projects. So
for those of you watching video, George is only 28 years old, even though he looks like he's like 60. So the job is stressing him out these days.
Yeah, my daughter's having a birthday this weekend, and I said to her something like, "Oh yeah, you're like 22 years old." And she goes, "Dad, haven't been 22 in a while." And I go, "No, in my mind, you're not older than 22. You're never older." So
it's the anniversary of your 22nd birthday, right?
Exactly.
Fantastic. So you are very involved with NALI, the National Association of Legal Investigators, and they've got a conference coming up in next month. Actually, by the time this airs, it'll be pretty much a month out to doing that. So that's in Kentucky, I think, right?
Louisville, Kentucky. They got a really good program set up. I'm going to be there. I'm hoping you're going to be there.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm sponsored.
Perfect. Oh, great.
It's will be present. I'll have a table.
Nice. I'll come visit you. I'll bring you some coffee. Bring you some Greek coffee, or maybe a bottle of Luzo or something.
I don't know anything about that. I don't know what that is. Who is that? Windex? What is that?
Something like that. It has a little different effect.
Yeah, it kind of tastes the same. Yeah, that's great. So really, I wanted to have you on today because you have this passion for ethics and passion for standards and this belief that across the board, all the way through the country, everybody should be performing at the same level of excellence and making sure that there's material out there to educate folks on what that level of excellence should be. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, in Indiana, I'm the president of the state association, and what we've always running into issues with licensing and things of that nature. Right now, everybody's licensed in Indiana, but at some point, there might be a fair, like in some other states, the licensing has gone away. And how do we distinguish, professional investigators from somebody that is just people in our industry come from a wide variety of backgrounds, and they can just put a sign out says I'm a professional investigator, and the only experience they had was watching the ID channel, and all of a sudden they think that they can do what we do, sell commercial services. So what we decided to do in Indiana, to complement the licensing, we created an accreditation program, where the first step in the accreditation program was to create a guideline for quality standards for investigators. And most professional investigators, they follow those guidelines. And the accreditation program that we're put together is basically an examination of how how firms follow those standards. And most standards throughout the country, and NALI has the certified legal investigator, and Telenet has the board accredited investigator. The Criminal Defense and Criminal Defense Investigators Training Council has the CCDI. All those certifications and accreditations have been for the individual investigator. What we put together, the program that we're putting together, is something that says this is what the firm is held to. This is the standards that we are held to collectively, so we can perform investigative services. Performing investigations, managing investigations, and operating an investigative business is three separate different things. You can be a great investigator and not be able to manage a case.
Right.
You can be a great business owner and not be able to like run an investigation. So this puts standards together for operating. And some people may know the law enforcement agencies are accredited, nationally accredited agencies, something similar to that. So these are the procedures. These firms agree to follow the standards in these procedures when they're conducting the way they do business, when they sell commercial services.
So how did you come up with the guidelines here?
Well, the guidelines, it's not something that, we've been investigators for, 30 years. It was input from a lot of investigators. It adopted many guidelines from inspector generals, government agencies, and we put it together to apply it towards the private sector.
Right.
We categorized it into 3 different categories. It's really 2 categories, but the first category is what we call the ethical behavior standards, and that really addresses the individual investigator. People working for your firm should adapt certain ethical guidelines to hire the ethics and integrity, the individual that you hire, to hire the ethics and integrity you bring to your firm and to our profession. But that's the only section that addresses the individual. The other section is just like general standards, which addresses the qualifications and the due professional care. And then the third section is the quality of the investigations, which addresses planning your investigations and planning your operations, executing your investigations, how you're reporting, and how you're managing investigative information, your case files, your sensitive data. And there's guidelines to everything that all those standards. And I'll give you an example, like qualifications. Investigators assigned to conduct an assignment must be collectively proficient to conduct the required task. That makes sense. Just because I'm an investigative agency, did I sell, for example, computer forensics or cell phone forensics? And things are becoming a lot more complicated now in the future. In the future future investigations, it's going to be even more complicated. So having these standards, and it gets expensive. If I say to somebody, I want to dump a phone, it's going to cost you $3,000. Do I follow the standards? I can't personally dump a phone. I don't have the training and experience, right. But I have to make sure that the person that is assigned to that task better have that. As a business owner, that's my responsibility, my standards. I can't sell that product.
Responsibility to know those people that can do it for you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's your responsibility. Shout out to Rob and Amber, 2 episodes in a row. Rob Fried and Amber Schroeder,
yeah.
2 great people, Paramin and Sandline Global. Great cell phone forensics.
Yeah, and as you can see, the digital world, the social media, it's becoming more and more complex. And the regular standard that we had, consumer beware, is more of a tool that people use to take advantage of consumers, especially private sector, private clients that just hire, or firms that specialize in private clients. A private client will hire you one time, maybe twice in their life. They're not somebody that hires investigators on a regular basis. So it's easy to fool them. So the standards book is not only valuable for investigators, but it's also valuable for the general public to protect them as well.
So is there something where you're envisioning having some sort of website or something where, companies can be listed as being, part of this accreditation process?
Well, we're actually in SPI, Indiana Society of Professional Investigators. This is our 50th year. So they've been around since 1972.
I can't believe you've been in that association for so long, dude.
Yeah, no, I feel like it. But so we're actually August 11th. We're actually doing a program, and we're overseeing that in a conference in South Bend, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody goes to indianainvestigators.com, there's going to be a little bit of an oversight. But once we implement the accreditation program in full, then people would be able to become a member of InSpy and then apply for accreditation for their agency. And there's a simple application, and then they would have to fulfill the obligations of the standards to make sure that they're following the standards.
That's great. Another marketing tool.
Yeah.
We're an accredited business within the industry, right?
Yeah, and if God forbid they take away our licensing, at least there's a distinction between firms that follow certain standards and firms that are documented to follow certain standards and firms that are not. And it would also, data providers that provide us information because we have security clearances, agencies, public agencies that give us security clearances because of our licensing. You can't just say I want to use that. So it gives them a tool also to provide those services to a higher level of quality investigator, and not just anybody that's just going to take that information and resell it, and it causes all these problems for us. Mm-hmm. Keeping the bad actors out of the business, pretty much.
Yeah, that's really important. Well, we're going to jump out real quick and take a quick break for sponsors. But when we come back, I just want to keep hammering down on these standards and practices. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back. You guys have been hearing for a long time about how much I love Crosstracks, but now you're going to hear from somebody else. So we got George Gergis here. George is a member and a user of Crosstracks. George, tell me real quickly what you love about Crosstracks.
The simplicity of using it and the ability to customize everything that you could do with Crosstracks is awesome. It actually allowed me to take the way that I do my business and implement it into their system. And not only am I able to manage 10 or 15 cases, I'm able to manage 50 to 100 cases with the same effort.
Fantastic. So Crosstracks, the case management system, they are SOC 2 certified. Basically, that's an encryption, really an upgrade. They're the only ones out there that are doing it. So please support this great sponsor that supports our show. Check them out. The links are in the show notes. Crosstracks, if you're an investigator, you should be using them today.
Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Are you an investigative professional with an international problem you can't solve? Conflict International has the knowledge and relationships to jump in for you. We compensate investigators for referring cases to our office. Contact us today for details. Conflict International uses insight, intelligence, investigation, risk management, and strategic solutions to solve problems troubling individuals and companies of all kinds, anywhere around the world. Whether you're planning to hire a person to a position of trust, carry out due diligence on a company, trace hidden assets, or require skilled boots on the ground, Conflict International investigators can seamlessly pursue a case across borders, offering a truly global solution. Find out about our extensive range of services at conflictinternational.com. Conflict International, global reach, international knowledge. Looking for an insurance agent that puts you first? Every PI business is different. That's why OREP Insurance can shop multiple markets to ensure you get the best coverage to meet your unique business needs. OREP's model is business by the golden rule, and for over 20 years, they've built their business by putting their clients first. So come enjoy a fast online application and same-day certificates of insurance at OREP.org. OREP has coverage for armed investigators, executive protection, and even has a separate policy for security firms. The application takes less than 5 minutes, so visit OREP.org today. OREP.org.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. We are joined today by George Gergis. George, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Of course. So we are talking standards and practices and the importance of having accreditation and just holding a certain level of the expectation of work that you do. And it's so important in our industry because so many people decide to get into this business without any real background. I mean, they've got the law enforcement background or some sort of criminal justice background. Maybe they've worked for somebody for a few years and they've got a little bit of, some experience in how to do this stuff, but nobody really tells folks like how to run a business, what to charge, the process of how to actually process the work when it comes in and how to do it. So it's kind of refreshing to have some sort of manual or something that kind of gives you the heads up on what to do, right?
Yeah, and we created the guide, and I'm pretty sure it should be posted on the Investigator's Toolbox.
Yes.
If anybody's listening, that if they it's available on the Indiana Investigators.com on our InSpy website. And if anybody's listening, want to send me an email, I'll send you a digital copy of it. And the guide is pretty much designed to be implemented into any operation of any type of firm. I don't care if you specialize in insurance, if claims investigations, if you specialize in personal injury investigations. The guide is sufficiently broad enough to fulfill all that diversity. And it's just basically a framework to perform high quality investigations. This is like the framework that if you put it into your firm, you should be able to proceed and conduct yourself in high standards and quality, and also provide to the American consumer the quality investigations that they deserve, because that's what we're here for. We play an important role in as investigators. We play an important role in many aspects of the American justice system and the business system, and allowing people to handle their personal affairs, with the privacy and dignity that's deserving of an individual. And we're selling commercial services to accomplish that, so we have to act accordingly and be professional. We just, like I said, not just because we had a little bit of investigative experience, all of a sudden we know how to manage cases and we know how to operate a business.
Sure. It's crazy because, you work so hard to get those clients, and it's almost like you got one shot. And I'm not talking about the one and done clients. I'm talking about, law firms and stuff like that. Like, 'cause you really put a lot of effort to get the business, and, and it'd be such a shame to get that shot and just blow it because, you're not organized enough. You don't really know what you're doing. The other suggestion that I would make is to go to, state associations events and national association events, and really, look for a mentor. Really get involved. And there are so many folks like George that are out there that they want to give knowledge away. Like they're more than happy to instruct you in the right way to do things. But if you're not there, if you don't participate, you're not going to meet these people. You're not going to do it. And, I get it. It's an investment. You got to take time off to go and do things, but it's something that really you should do. It's really important. If you want to be in business more than a year or two, you got to take that time to make yourself better at what you do. Right.
Yeah. Developing your knowledge, skill set, that's what we do. And I think I've heard statistics, 50% of the people that are investigators today will not be investigators 3 years from now. And that's one of the reasons why they don't increase their knowledge in conducting their skill in their trade and their business knowledge. And one of the biggest problems I have when I'm soliciting work from attorneys or people that should be using investigators is not that they used an investigator and they haven't used an investigator. My biggest problem is people that have used an investigator and have been disappointed by the use of investigators, and then it's harder to get somebody to actually trust another investigator. So bad actors or people that are doing substandard work are really hurting everybody in the industry collectively.
Yeah. I mean, it's you see it all the time in these newspaper or news sources that the sexy story, right? PI screws it up again or causes problems again. PI invaded this person's privacy and sold data to somebody. Like you see that stuff pop up all the time. And I remember reading something, I think it was in Vice or one of these trashy web reporting places, and they had called several different PIs, and they were trying to get comments from them, and it's like they're like, wow, like a news agency is contacting me for a quote. Yeah, I'll talk to you about it, and then they give them some sort of quote, and then it gets twisted and manipulated in a way that it probably didn't intend to. And next thing you know, like they're like doing damage to our industry, and they don't even realize they're doing damage. I mean, at least I would hope they don't realize they're doing damage. But like somebody was talking about like running social security numbers or like how easy it was and all that. And it was like, it was twisted in a way that they were actually doing that work. And that's not what they said. They were just talking about how easy it was to do it, and not that necessarily that they were doing it. And of course it was twisted, right? So you got to be really, really careful of that. I mean, I have a strict policy when it comes to press. Like I don't talk to reporters about the work I do. I don't, no comment.
Yeah, that's pretty much, our policy too. We don't talk about, obviously we don't talk about cases that we're working. And when they want general oversight, we'd be happy to give them the same thing. We talk about the standards that should be out there, what is expected, but we're not discussing, how, methodology on how we do things. The only thing that I may say, and I think it's important for everybody to know, and one of my like pet peeves is, a client says, I want you to do this. And the investigator says, okay, I'll do it. Without asking, what's the purpose of this? Dump this phone, for example, or I don't know whatever example. The way we do investigations should not be, it should be client centric, but not client-driven investigations. The investigations, the way we do them and the proper way to do them are lead-generating investigations. You follow the evidence. That's how you do it. The purpose, you create a scope and you create a purpose for your investigation. Every case that you should have a scope instead of a client saying, well, I want you to watch this person or do surveillance on this person. What's the purpose of that? And you tell me what the purpose is, and then I will tell you the investigative strategy that we're going to use, not the other way around. Or what's the purpose of your profession? What standards are you following if you're just a tool for anybody to do whatever you want them to do? That's a hired gun. That's a fixer. It's not an investigator.
Call Mr. Wolf, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Wolf, take care of it. That blood's so hard to get out. It's crazy, and you see that stuff happening, and it's like frustrating when it happens. And then you got some politician or somebody that's trying to make a name for themselves, and they're looking for buzzwords and keywords that are going to get them elected, right? What's their motivation? They want either a term, or they want a second term or a third term or whatever. So it's like, okay, what's the buzzword? Data privacy, right? That's a big one. And now all of a sudden it's like, you got these shady private investigators because that's all everybody thinks we are, we've got our trench coat and our fedora and we're hiding in the shadows and doing all that, and it's so silly, but that's just what it is. And nobody knows better. Right. So it's like being involved with NCISS and going to Washington and talking to these politicians or people within their offices. And it's like, hey, this is what we do. And they're like, I had no idea, right? I had no idea that you how useful you guys are, or why you're needed to do all this stuff. And it's like when those bills come across and they don't they can't put two and two together, or they don't know. It's like, oh yeah, data privacy is important. No carve outs for anybody. It's like, I'm going to get behind this, and they don't realize. Big problem.
Yeah, and we're an easy target because traditionally there's been so much publicity for investigators, whether it's through the movies or whether it's through articles or media. And we're a small group. We're less than 100,000 in private investigators in the United States, in a country of 300 million people, over 300 million people. There's less than 100,000 of us servicing that many. That's enough work for everybody all the time. But you have to be able to do it with quality and standards. And when somebody picks on us, we're a small group. Overall, we're a small group, but the effect that we have on the American justice system, on the American business system, and on people's personal lives is enormous. People don't call an investigator because of something minor. They call it because this is the most significant thing happening in their life. They got charged, or they got a custody issue, or they got injured. These are things that we help them along with, and
life-changing.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, I don't know how helpful you are, but
I try. I try to be helpful, but
I gotta be nicer to George. George is gonna shoot me a note later, like, hey.
Remember, I'm gonna meet you in about a month in
something for you
in Louisville.
In Louisville, it's a slugger.
And I did see an email come across that we're going to be visiting a bourbon distillery.
Yeah,
so
I'll be on a plane on my way home. I'm gonna miss that one. Yeah, I'm bummed about that. So
I don't know. I was going to be on a plane too, but how can you miss that?
Yeah, I've been traveling a lot. I get around these days. And I am looking forward to going there actually, because I've never been. That's going to be my first trip down to Louisville. So super excited, and I love the Nally family. Is and what's so interesting is that like this article, this pamphlet thing that you wrote, it's literally a book.
It's a booklet. Yeah.
Booklet. All right. It's birthed from the relationships of all these folks, of just, guys like us that have just been in it for so long. And it's like, we're going to leave the next generation something, right? You're quickly, gaining the reputation, George, of, someone like Kitty, someone that is just like, okay, when it comes to ethics, when it comes to, doing, the standard practices and things like that, let's get that Gergis guy to come talk to everybody because, he knows what he's talking about. Right. What a con job. Congratulations, sir.
Well, thank you. I didn't realize that, but I just tried to, there's no uniform code of conduct for an agency throughout the country. And that would be great if we did have something that, hey,
listen, to start what you're doing,
Yeah.
Why can't New York adopt? Why can't the New York Association and take that wonderful booklet that you have there and just, change the crest on the cover to the New York Association?
Or why can't we just create one and it gets adopted by multiple agencies or multiple states? It's nothing that says that we can't improve on it, and it's purposely called a guide because it gives you guide. There's some there's some stuff in there that says must do, but these are the guide on how you can accomplish what must be done, and everybody does it a little bit differently. And just a quick example, detailed invoicing. That should be something that it should be a standard, but how people accomplish that, how they put together their invoices, there's literally hundreds of ways, but they have to meet certain standards. You have to be able to explain all the work that you did. Reporting guidelines. How did you report this? The standards have to meet did you report on all the relevant aspects of the case? That's something that should be done on when you're taking a job. Report on the relevant aspects of the case, whether it's verbally or written. Those are like the guidelines for each individual agency. Right. But there should be the guidelines where it says, hey, okay, I can't report on everything because I ran out of money, because I ran out of funds. So there has to be something in there that says, these are my recommendations. If you get more funding, we need to continue the investigation accordingly. Right. That should be something that's basic, but and like I said, you'll be able to recognize quality versus not quality, and have a better quality control for any investigative firm if you just go through the guide.
Common sense. I mean, ask anyone in Colorado, how they would feel about having some sort of standards procedure booklet these days. I'm sure they would be all for it. Because when the licensing goes away, if you can have some sort of accreditation, some sort of, hey, these are standards you're expected to be held by. It just adds credibility, and again, it's good for marketing and all that good stuff.
And if it happens in Colorado, I'm sorry. If it happens in Colorado, it could happen anywhere. It could happen in any state.
Yeah. No, and it's so great, that somebody identified this and said, okay, I'm going to start putting something together, and hopefully, states like California or Texas or Florida, these big states with tons of investigators, like they start embracing this stuff and really, pushing it forward and putting on the front burner per se, like that'd be really cool.
We would love to have all the help we can get. Indiana is a small association. It's population-wise, it's a smaller state. It takes money and resources to accomplish everything. And so far, everything has been done by volunteers, supporters and sponsors like the Investigative Toolbox, PI Perspectives, some data suppliers, some insurance companies that provide a little bit of funding so we can support these projects, and a lot of volunteer work by a lot of people. And the more people that get involved, the more resources we put into it, the more we can get the word out, and the more benefit we can be to the profession.
Yeah, it's all good stuff you're doing, man. I commend you. So we're going to wind down here because I think I've had enough of you. Okay. I've met my quota for the year for Gergis. But all joking aside, man, I love you. I love what you're doing. It's so great. I can't wait to see you, man. I can't wait to hang out with you. God, it's like a month. By the time this episode airs, it's going to be a couple of weeks. So George, if folks wanted to send you hate mail, where would they send it to?
Well, the name of my company is Investigative Support Unit, and www.investigativesupport.net, investigativesupport.net. All my contact information is on there. My email, they just look under George Gergis, and they have direct phone number to me and emails, but investigativesupport.net.
Great. Man, it's a pleasure as always. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a good sport and putting up with my
Matt. You do a great job, and the Investigators Toolbox that you put together, that's a great resource and it's helped out a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, you keep up the good work, and I'll be here to support you as much as I can, buddy.
I appreciate it, man. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch everybody next week on the next show. Take care, everyone.
This was a great episode. We hope you gathered greater insight from George. We also want to say a special thanks to Crosstracks, PI Institute for Education, OREP, and Conflict International for sponsoring our show. So please support our great supporters. Have you thought about joining the investigatorstoolbox.com yet? Now's the time to get on board and join the fastest growing digital community for investigative professionals. If you use code GOODBYE22, that's the number 22, you'll save 25% until January 8th. So climb aboard now, and that'll help support the future of this podcast. If you have a question or comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We want your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back next week with a brand new show. So make sure you tune in and stay safe out there.